Most social interactions revolve around surface-level conversations, simple exchanges that provide comfort and familiarity. For most people, that's enough. But for deep thinkers, this type of dialogue often feels empty, even draining. They yearn for meaning, for conversations that challenge ideas, explore truths, and expand understanding. As a result, they may come across as distant, disinterested, or aloof, not because they think they're better, but because they see through the illusion of so many common pursuits. Philosophers like Schopenhauer recognized this tension. He saw desire, ambition, and even the pursuit of pleasure as illusions, traps that most people chase blindly. In his view, intelligence didn't lead to happiness but to clarity, and often to discomfort. The more a person understands the world, the harder it is to overlook its flaws. The more deeply one thinks, the lonelier one becomes. This clarity comes at a cost: exclusion. Deep thinkers are often misunderstood, not because they are wrong, but because they are right too early. Their very presence forces others to face truths they'd rather avoid. Society doesn't really fear intelligence. It fears what intelligence reveals. That's why those who see more often feel isolated. But Schopenhauer didn't view this as a punishment. He saw solitude as a gift, an opportunity for reflection, creation, and inner growth. He advised thinkers not to seek validation in the mainstream, but to find kindred spirits through books, philosophy, and intellectual communities where real connection is possible. The rejection of deep thinking is built into the structure of society. From a young age, we are conditioned to value comfort over complexity, repetition over originality. Psychologically, the brain seeks predictability and ease. What psychologists call cognitive ease means we gravitate towards simple, familiar ideas because they require less effort. Complex or unfamiliar thoughts trigger discomfort. This leads to system justification, a tendency to defend outdated norms because change feels uncertain. Add groupthink to the mix, and you get a culture that punishes dissent, even when that dissent is rooted in truth. This preference for ease over challenge creates a society where intellectual depth is seen not as enlightening, but as threatening. Nowhere is this more visible than in the digital age. Social media amplifies what is fast, emotional, and easy to digest. The ones who get attention are not those who offer insight, but those who can shrink complex ideas into catchy, viral sound bites. Algorithms reward engagement, and nothing engages like outrage, humor, or controversy. Thoughtful discourse, by contrast, takes time and effort. As a result, echo chambers form, where people are only exposed to information that confirms what they already believe. In such an environment, those who challenge the narrative are ignored, mocked, or attacked. But this resistance doesn't begin online. It begins in the very institutions that shape us. In schools, conformity is rewarded more than creativity. Students who memorize and repeat succeed, while those who question are labeled disruptive. In the workplace, it's not the most intelligent who rise, but those who fit the culture and protect the status quo. In politics, leaders who speak uncomfortable truths are often defeated by those who tell people what they want to hear. History is filled with brilliant minds who were dismissed, silenced, or punished in their time. Only after their ideas were no longer threatening did they receive the recognition they deserved. Galileo was condemned for revealing scientific truths that contradicted religious authority. Nietzsche was dismissed as insane for questioning traditional morality. Tesla died in obscurity despite imagining technologies that could have transformed the world. Hypatia, one of history's few prominent female thinkers, was murdered for challenging religious orthodoxy. Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, was chemically castrated for being gay despite saving millions of lives through his work in World War II. These thinkers all had one thing in common: they were ahead of their time. Their ideas weren't wrong, they were just too disruptive for the societies they lived in. Only in hindsight did the world accept what it once feared. But this doesn't mean deep thinkers are doomed to eternal isolation. The key is learning when, and with whom, to share your thoughts. Not every space is fertile for depth, and that's okay. Wisdom lies in choosing your audience. You don't need the approval of the masses, just the understanding of the right few. Seek out those who resonate with your wavelength, whether through books, digital communities, or intimate circles of thought. The greatest minds in history found ways to make complex ideas accessible. As Einstein famously said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Simplicity, when used skillfully, becomes a bridge between depth and connection. Society may never fully embrace deep thinkers, but that should never be a reason to stop thinking deeply. It is precisely these minds that move the world forward, even when the world isn't ready. Thoughtfulness is like a seed. It needs time, patience, and the right environment to grow. While most will choose the comfort of illusions, it is those willing to face truth, however painful, who spark real change. If you've ever felt out of place for thinking too much, take heart. You are not alone. You are simply seeing more than others are ready to see. Have you ever felt that the deeper you think, the more distant you become from others? That the more clarity you gain, the less people seem willing to listen? It's not just your imagination. Throughout history, society has shown a deep discomfort toward those who think critically and profoundly, not because they are wrong, but because they perceive truths others would rather avoid. From Socrates to Tesla, from Galileo to Schopenhauer, brilliant minds have been mocked, silenced, or ignored not for a lack of intelligence but because they disrupted the comfort of conventional thought. Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers, believed intelligence wasn't a gift, but a curse, a trait that isolates those who see too clearly. But why does this happen? Why does deep thinking provoke such unease? The answer lies deep in human psychology. Think about how we respond to different forms of superiority. When we see someone who is physically strong, we might admire their strength. Someone wealthy may spark envy, but rarely hostility. But when faced with someone intellectually superior, discomfort arises. Psychologists refer to this as the mirror effect. The presence of a deep thinker reflects back the limitations of those around them. Unlike physical or financial superiority, intelligence strikes at the heart of identity. Our thoughts and beliefs shape how we see ourselves. So when someone questions what we take for granted, it can feel like a personal attack rather than an invitation to grow. Instead of admiration, intelligence is often met with resistance. Not because deep thinkers are arrogant, but because their very existence forces others to confront their own cognitive boundaries. That's why society often isolates deep thinkers. Not because they choose solitude, but because their insights disrupt the emotional equilibrium of the people around them. Most people are not prepared to wrestle with uncomfortable truths, so they retreat into easier, surface-level conversations. If you've ever introduced a complex idea in casual conversation and been met with awkward silence or a quick topic change, you've experienced this firsthand. It's not accidental, it's a defense mechanism. Rather than being curious, many people shut down. Rather than engage, they dismiss. This is why those who value depth and truth often feel disconnected in social spaces. In these settings, confidence is often valued more than substance. Charisma wins over complexity. Individuals who speak in bold, simplified terms tend to attract more attention than those who explore nuance and depth. This explains why simplistic thinkers often rise to influence, because they tell people what they want to hear. Meanwhile, those who challenge widely accepted ideas are often sidelined. It's the paradox of intelligence. The more someone seeks truth, the more they risk alienation. But there's more to this resistance than just social discomfort. Neuroscience reveals that when people feel intellectually threatened, their brain's amygdala, the center responsible for fear and threat detection, becomes highly active. In other words, deep thinkers can trigger the same kind of primal fear response as a physical danger. But why would intelligence cause the brain to react as if it were under attack? The answer lies in human evolution. For most of history, survival depended not on being the smartest person, but on being accepted by the group. Tribal societies valued harmony, not disruption. Being excluded could mean death. That's why the human brain prioritizes social acceptance over intellectual pursuit. A highly intelligent individual, even without intending to, disrupts that tribal balance. Their presence challenges norms, beliefs, and group dynamics, triggering a primitive defense system, as if the thinker is an adversary rather than simply different. A 2021 study from Stanford University uncovered something even more revealing. The rejection of deep thinkers is highly context-dependent. One-on-one, people feel less threatened by intelligence. But in group settings, the threat response spikes dramatically. Why? Because social status becomes more visible in groups. When someone feels intellectually outshined, they instinctively try to preserve their position, often by dismissing, undermining, or excluding the more thoughtful individual. This explains why deep thinkers may thrive in private conversations but struggle in public spaces. Multiple cognitive biases help explain this phenomenon further. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows that people with low competence tend to overestimate their knowledge, while highly intelligent individuals often underestimate their own. This creates a clash. Those who know less may confidently dismiss those who know more. Status quo bias makes people favor familiar ideas over complex truths, and the backfire effect causes people to cling more tightly to their beliefs when presented with opposing evidence. All of this means that when deep thinkers introduce challenging ideas, they often encounter not curiosity, but resistance. In today's digital world, this dynamic has only worsened. Social media platforms reward engagement over depth. The content that spreads fastest is often simple, emotional, and sensational, not thoughtful or nuanced. As a result, thinkers who rely on complexity and depth find it difficult to compete with catchy soundbites. The more profound the idea, the harder it is to condense it into a shareable post. As entertainment continues to eclipse education, society becomes increasingly resistant to intellectual challenge. So what does all this mean for deep thinkers? The rejection they face isn't just social, it's neurological, psychological, and cultural. It's wired into human behavior, reinforced by tribal instincts, and magnified by technology. But that doesn't mean deep thinkers should be silent. It simply means they must be aware of the forces working against them. If society resists intelligence, what does it embrace? The answer is comfort. People crave predictability over truth. Schopenhauer believed that the truly intelligent suffer not because they are misunderstood, but because they understand too much. Most people live driven by what he called the will to live, a blind urge for pleasure, comfort, and survival. But the deep thinker operates differently. Instead of following instincts, they are led by the will to truth, an unrelenting need to uncover what is real, even when it hurts. While most people find meaning in entertainment, relationships, and routine pleasures, the intellectual often sees these as distractions from deeper existential questions. This creates an unbridgeable divide. The more someone understands human nature, the harder it becomes to connect with others. They see through lies and superficial interactions. Small talk, status games, and polite dishonesty become unbearable. Deep thinkers crave substance in a world obsessed with appearances, and for that reason, they often walk alone. Not by choice, but because conformity has no room for minds that dare to question everything.